So one thing that people are really concerned about today is just being able to afford to live. We have seen costs in almost every part of our life increase. And I'm going to unbundle a few of them and then talk about what we could do about those areas. So as we know, we're seeing inflation that we haven't seen since the late 1970s, early 1980s. I lived through that. Inflation was running 18 to 20% in those years. We were in the Carter administration. President Carter unfortunately dubbed that time as a malaise in the country and really didn't have answers as to how we were going to resolve that. The cost of things was running far faster than the increases in wages to people. The cost of things were running far faster than you could earn money on saved money, etc. It was a really challenging time. Well, we went through years and years and years of very low inflation, and now inflation's back. Now, I'm not going to go into the causes of inflation. Much of it certainly is driven by government policy and fiscal policy, but it's a reality. And so what we're seeing is the cost of groceries dramatically higher than it's been. The cost of energy dramatically higher than it's been. Sticker shock when you go to the gas pump to fill your car up with gas. The cost of housing is just crazy. You look at first-time home buyers and what they confront. A medium home in Metro Denver now is something like $690,000, a medium home. Colorado has the third highest priced housing market in the country. So what can we do about affordability? Let's just kind of break down the big ones. Let's start with housing because that's anybody's single biggest expense. We really have to recognize that we have a supply and demand issue in Colorado. We have more people wanting to buy houses than there is inventory, and so we're seeing classic supply and demand drivers drive the price of housing up. And as the price of housing has risen, the demand relative to that pricing is holding pretty constant. You can't issue a government edict that says we're going to fix the pricing at which you can sell a house. That would be really contrary to our system. But what we can do is try as aggressively and immediately as we can to affect supply. And there's various levels of supply. Supply of single-family residences. Just increasing supply of single-family residences is going to start to bring down the cost of buying a single-family residence because there's going to be more inventory available for the buyers out there. We've had, for like the last 3 years in Colorado, an absolute seller's market. We've lived in, for a long time, buyer's markets. And in buyer's markets, there's competitiveness on pricing, there's reasonableness on pricing, and so on. We got to get more inventory. We need to encourage contractors to build. We need to encourage developers to develop land. We need government entities to fast-track development proposals and requests. And we need to reduce the costs of just even getting started with a single-family home. So if you were to build a single-family home and start it tomorrow, just about anywhere in Metro Denver, before you put the first shovel in the ground to dig the foundation, you're going to have about $100,000 in fees that go to governmental entities before you even get started. Well, that's just way more than is reasonable. So we need to go and look at that level and see, why are the fees so high? How can we get those fees down? How can we make it far more reasonable? I built a home about 30 years ago. The total cost of the fees to get that home started were about $15,000. And I thought at the time, wow, that was a lot of money. Today it's many times that much money. Second type of housing, condominiums. We've kind of flatline on the number of condominiums built. And condos for many people are their first home, the first time they own a property. And the condo market, which used to be very robust in Colorado, has been frozen for some time. We need to come to grips with contractors and construction defects and laws around that. And really we need to bring together all of the parties, those who pursue legal remedies for construction defects, and there certainly are construction defects. We need to bring forward those who would develop condominium projects, and figure out win-wins so that we can get more condominium projects going faster, so that we can get first-time home buyers into homes. And buying a condominium over the long run is a much better circumstance for someone than renting an apartment. When you rent an apartment, you're at your landlord, and I don't begrudge landlords at all, but your landlord can raise your rent every single year. And we've seen extravagant increases in rent. When you buy a condo, you're effectively fixing your housing costs for the long term, and you're building equity in the home. When you're renting, you're not building any equity. And certainly on the third piece of housing affordability, we do need more apartments. We do need more rental units because, again, the classic supply and demand issues are affecting rental properties, and those who are currently landlords are making record profits, and properties, when they sell, are selling for record numbers. So we need to address that. Okay, two other areas of affordability: fuel and groceries. A lot of what happens in the energy industry takes place outside of Colorado, for sure. And we recognize that oil, for example, is an international market. Right now, we have been seeing for months spikes in raw energy prices. A barrel of oil has gone from $40 or $50 a gallon to like a barrel to $140 a barrel. So you're seeing significant increase in the cost of a barrel of oil. Again, you do have supply and demand functioning in energy markets. We achieved, for the first time in my memory, energy independence in 2019, 2020. That energy independence liberated us from needing to buy energy from foreign countries. The whole supply-demand equation worked in the favor of consumers, and gasoline at the pump, natural gas for homes, and so on was very affordable. We need to get back to energy independence here. The energy market is a key market for us in this country. It's a resource that we have abundantly, not just in Colorado, but across the country. And so as Coloradans, we should be doing everything we can to encourage responsible development of our energy resources, and we should be encouraging national leaders to move towards energy independence and to change this whole supply and demand equation, which was in 2019, 2020 favorable to consumers and now is not at all favorable to consumers. We need to do those things with energy. So the third big piece, for actually trying to get you two more pieces of affordability. A third big piece of affordability is groceries and household staples. We're seeing the supply chain challenges that commenced with COVID are extending for a prolonged period of time, and they're affecting the pricing of almost everything. Wish I had a great answer for you on this one. It's certainly a really challenging one. I think as much as anything, as we've had these disruptions from supply chains, we all throughout this country, certainly in this state and around the world, we need to get back to living our lives. We need to get back to producing products, distributing those products, getting them in large quantities to consumers, and ultimately the cost of those things will come down. Fortunately, in terms of the three things I've mentioned so far, it's probably the least expensive of the three, but still expensive. Now, the fourth one, healthcare. Healthcare has been growing for years significantly higher than the rate of inflation. And it has gobbled up more and more and more of our total economy. So not that long ago, 25, 30 years ago, healthcare was about 5%, maybe a little longer than that. Let's say 40 years ago, healthcare was about 5% of total GDP. Well, we've seen it just grow and grow and grow disproportionately to the rest of our economy, to where today healthcare is about 18% of the economy. So 18 cents of every dollar spent in the economy is spent on healthcare. In addition to, you're insured through either a government program with Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare if you're over 65, Medicaid if your income is such that you qualify for Medicaid. That's a large portion of Colorado. That's about north of a third of all Coloradans are on Medicare and Medicaid. And then you have the group insurance market, i.e. you get your insurance through your company, and then you have the individual insurance market, and then you have a small number of people who aren't insured at all. Well, in all of those situations, the costs are just running well beyond what's meaningful. And we like to blame, for example, insurance companies. Well, my view, having studied healthcare for a long time, is insurance companies are reflective of cost. They're not drivers of cost. What we really need to do is look at how do we change the behavior of consumers and how do we change the behavior of providers. We don't have a healthcare market. If we had a market, people would be responsible for a fair amount of what they spend in healthcare. We don't have that at all in healthcare. And consequently, we all feel victimized by this system where the costs just keep going up so much. I know many people who, when they get a raise, the entire amount of the raise at their job goes to increased healthcare costs. Now, from the employer, as an employer, from the employer's standpoint, their costs to provide a healthcare benefit are also going up. For most companies, healthcare is the second largest expense to payroll in the business. And it's the most uncontrollable expense. So there are things we can do to get to a place where consumers begin to act like consumers, providers begin to act like competitive businesses, and we'll see dramatic things happen. I will tell you that we've lived through years of government trying to fix the cost conundrum in healthcare, and all government has resulted in is ever-increasing costs in healthcare. We can look and say it's a classic Einstein scenario of doing the same thing all over and over the same, doing the same thing over and over again all the time, expecting different results. We keep thinking that government has answers to the healthcare conundrum, and we keep getting ever-rising costs in healthcare. So we need to pause and say that's just not going to be the answer. The answer is for government to take an appropriate role in the healthcare system and then unleash a few things to allow markets to work, and affordability will increase dramatically.